And welcome to another week of Kinder Chat. This week I am sharing all about how to give your center directions without repeating yourself 1,000 times or students forgetting what to do. So I know this was something that took me a few years to kind of get a hang of, and once I was able to give directions properly the first time, it made such a difference on how my students were actually completing their centers and not needing my help at all. So if you are looking for some help getting your students to be a little bit more independent and doing the centers on their own without you having to go back and re-explain centers every single time, then this video is for you. So the first thing, and this is the biggest tip I can give you, is before you do a center independently, make sure that you do it as a whole group or in your small group. So anytime that we were doing a new phonics skill and we had a new picture sort, before I just gave that center to them and just let them go, I always made sure that we did it as a whole group first. So I did it as a lesson activity one day, and then the next day I would have them do it in their centers. That way they all have some experience with how to do it, and you are able to model exactly how you want your students to do it as a whole group the day before. And they all have at least one turn doing the picture sort together, so that way when it comes time the next day to do it, they are ready to go. So with all of your centers, you should do it at least one time. I would not recommend trying to just give the students a center that they've never done before, even if they're working with others, just because it's so much easier if you do it together first. I do the I do, we do, you do modeling. So I always show them exactly how to do it first. Then we talk about it together, we do a few together, and then they would get a chance to come up. So with a picture sort, I would pick up a picture card and say, okay, this card is going to go here. This is how I'm doing it. I model my thinking out loud. Then that way when we're doing it together, I'm still modeling my thinking out loud as we're doing the picture sort. Finally, they're able to do it on their own. So now when it comes time for them to do it on their own in centers, they already have that modeling in their head. They remember, oh, my teacher said that I need to look at the picture, say the word, and then try to find the middle sound. And that's how I sort it. So once you do it with your students once, you're good to go. You can have centers. So I'm just going to share with you a couple centers that I would do with my students and exactly how I would explain it to them to help them so they did not have a lot of questions. So the next tip in modeling centers is to make sure that you have all of the centers with you as you are explaining them, because when you are trying to explain a center and you don't have it in front of you, like you just saw with me explaining the picture sort, it's a lot harder to visualize, especially for little kids. So I always had all of my centers in front of me. I used bins and I just had them in the bin. I would just pull it out quickly, explain it, put it back, and then when I dismissed my centers, I just handed each of the bins to one of the students in that group and they went on their way. So I'm just going to kind of share with you a couple of things that I did to help my students so that they weren't confused when it came time to do the centers on their own. So the first thing, if you are doing any kind of worksheet, it's important to show your students what the finished work is going to look like. So I would tell my students, okay, in this center, you are going to cut out all of the pictures. So first you're going to cut. Next, you're going to glue the lowercase letter next to the uppercase letter. So then you're going to go through and glue. So first we cut, next we glue. Great job. And then if you finish, you can color. So this is what your worksheet will look like when it's all complete. You will have the uppercase letter next to the lowercase letter glued on nicely, and then you can color them if you finish on time. So that is how I would explain a worksheet with my students. I also like to have a visual example. So if it's a worksheet, it doesn't have to be the same exact one. So like these two are actually different worksheets. this is the completed sample, so students have that expectation of this is what it needs to look like, but this is the actual worksheet they're using. So they can't just copy the answers from this one because it's different. So it's helpful to have the visual, this is what it looks like when it's done, for worksheet type centers. For picture sorts, if you have a pocket chart next to you, that's great. If not, you can just hold it up and it's completely fine. So the first thing I do is I show them the headings. Okay, we are going to sort rhyming words. So we are going to look and see if 2 words rhyme, yes, or if they don't rhyme, no, and we are going to sort them. Ready? Let's do one together, and then we'll do one together. So this is Dad ran. Does dad and ran rhyme? No. Okay, so we're gonna put it under here. Then the next student is going to go pick a card, show everyone, and say what words. Bat, mat. Do they rhyme? And then that student is going to say, yes, they rhyme, and sort it under yes. So that way, with the picture sort, I'm showing them exactly how to do it. I want the whole group participating, so I make sure that they show their group members what they're working on. And then I also kind of go over every once in a while what to do if the student maybe makes a wrong choice. So if maybe they put it under the wrong heading, I teach my students how to kindly say, oh, I think that it goes under this one and here's why. So I teach them just to be able to talk to each other and correct each other without making them feel bad. So another one I have are sensory bins. So with the sensory bin, they are picking the card and they are finding the word thumb and coloring it in. So with this, I would have the sensory bin with me. I would have the cards. I would show them how everyone gets to do one turn and then they all get another turn. So the first person goes thumb. They all find it together on their worksheet, thumb, and then they're gonna color it so it's the same color. So they're all gonna color it pink. Once everyone's done, then the next student gets to pick a card and solve. So just really explaining what you are doing with your students is going to be a game changer. And then another one, so this one's a little tricky. So sight word bingo is always a big hit in the classroom. However, it is kind of hard to do during centers. I mainly do this during whole group, but towards the end of the year, I like to throw it in as just a fun little extra game. So what I do is I have one student get to be the word caller. When I have a set of words that they can pull out of a little bin and they call the words. So with this, I usually have my students think of a number, and then whatever student gets closest to that number that I pick, they get to be the name caller, the word caller first. So it's always like super random. You could pick a popsicle stick with a student's name. Maybe whatever student was working really hard, you could just let them do it. But I always make sure that I designate, okay, you are the word caller. You get to call the words today. Another day, another student gets to call the words. So I always say that you will have a chance to do it, but today it's this student's day. So that way they're not fighting over who gets to do what. They all know what their job is. So for that one, they're picking a word and they're calling it to their friends, and their friends are covering it. So this is another example of something that we did a lot as a whole group. So that way they are able to do it as a teamwork center because they already know exactly what to do. So once I explain all of the centers, I always make sure I have my students repeat back to me what it is. Sometimes I'll have a student come up to me or come up to the front and explain it again to the class, especially if it's like a newer center. And this takes about 5 minutes. However, it is 5 minutes that you are able to be working with your small group uninterrupted. You're not answering the same repetitive questions over and over again. It is a 5 minutes well spent. They should all know what to do. If there's any questions, I always I have a couple tips for you on my blog. You can check out the blog post below on what to do with your students to help them become more independent with their centers. So make sure you check that post out as well. And I will link all of these spring and Easter activities, since right now, if you're watching this live, it is spring or Easter season. So I'll link all these activities below if you are interested in any of them. So that is all for this week. I hope that was helpful in helping you give directions to your students for centers. And I'll see you next week.